It was a calm Saturday afternoon in a quiet suburban town in the United States, the kind of place where lawns were trimmed perfectly and neighbors rarely spoke beyond polite smiles. Sunlight reflected off parked cars as soft music drifted through the air. Inside a large, well-kept house on the corner, preparations were in full swing for a wedding. Florists carried bouquets inside, caterers unloaded trays of food, and guests began to arrive dressed in elegant suits and colorful dresses. Laughter and excitement filled the atmosphere, signaling a day of joy. Across the street, however, not everyone saw celebration. A white neighbor named Karen stood behind her curtains, watching closely. She noticed several cars parking along the road, more than usual. Groups of black guests gathered, greeting each other warmly, hugging, and smiling. To Karen, this felt out of place. She frowned, her mind racing with assumptions shaped by fear rather than facts. She didn't walk over to ask what was happening. She didn't look for decorations or listen to the music. Instead, she reached for her phone. From her perspective, something felt wrong. Too many people, she muttered. They don't belong here. Within minutes, she dialed the police and reported a suspicious gathering, exaggerating her concerns. She claimed there might be trouble, that the crowd looked loud and disorderly. After hanging up, she felt justified, convinced she was protecting her neighborhood. Meanwhile, inside the house, the bride stood in front of a mirror, taking a deep breath as her friends adjusted her veil. She was radiant, her smile filled with nervous excitement. The groom, in another room, laughed with his groomsmen, sharing memories and calming his nerves. This home wasn't just any house, it belonged to his family, a place filled with history, respect, and years of hard work. Today, it was opening its doors to love and unity. Outside, a wedding planner coordinated arrivals, guiding guests with professionalism and grace. Everything was orderly, peaceful, and joyful. Children played quietly in the yard, elders chatted on the porch, and soft music played in the background. There was no chaos, only celebration. Soon, the sound of police sirens cut through the music. Conversations paused. Guests looked around, confused. 2 police cars pulled up and officers stepped out, scanning the scene. The wedding planner approached them calmly, explaining that it was a private wedding ceremony. She showed permits, schedules, and invitations. The officers listened carefully, observing the neatly dressed guests, the decorations, and the respectful atmosphere. Across the street, Karen stepped outside, arms crossed, waiting to be proven right. But instead of arrests or warnings, she saw officers smiling politely, nodding, and even congratulating people. Her confidence began to fade. Something didn't add up. This wasn't what she had imagined when she made that call. As guests whispered and the music lowered, the front door of the house slowly opened. The groom was about to step outside. And with that single moment, everything Karen thought she knew was about to collapse, but she didn't realize it yet. The groom stepped onto the porch with calm confidence, adjusting his jacket as sunlight fell across his face. He carried himself with quiet authority, the kind earned through years of discipline and service. Conversations around him softened as attention naturally turned his way. One of the officers immediately straightened his posture, recognition flashing across his face. "Sir," he said respectfully, offering a nod. The other officer followed, their tone shifting from cautious professionalism to warm courtesy. The groom introduced himself politely and asked if there was a problem. The wedding planner explained again that a neighbor had reported a suspicious gathering. The groom listened patiently, then smiled. He explained that the house belonged to his family and that the event was his wedding. He mentioned, almost casually, that he served as a senior officer in the U.S. Army and had recently returned from a leadership assignment. The officers exchanged a glance. This was someone they knew by reputation, if not personally. Congratulations followed quickly. One officer shook his hand and apologized for the interruption, explaining that they had to respond to every call. The groom accepted the apology with grace, emphasizing that he understood their duty. He invited them to take a moment to see the permits and meet the planner, ensuring everything was transparent and respectful. The officers agreed, visibly relieved. Across the street, the neighbor stood frozen. Her arms slowly dropped to her sides as reality set in. This wasn't a noisy crowd or a threat to the neighborhood. This was a wedding, organized, elegant, and filled with joy. And the man she had silently judged was not only the groom but a respected leader who had dedicated his life to serving the country. The certainty she felt earlier dissolved into embarrassment and discomfort. Guests began to relax again. Music returned, laughter followed, and the tension melted away. Some guests noticed the neighbor standing there and exchanged knowing looks, but no one confronted her. The groom, focused on the bigger picture, asked the planner to continue as scheduled. Today was about love, not conflict. The officers prepared to leave, offering one last congratulation to the couple. Before getting into their car, one officer glanced back at the neighbor, then at the joyful gathering behind him. He shook his head slightly, a silent reminder of how often assumptions lead people astray. As the patrol cars drove away, the street returned to peace. Inside the house, the bride and groom finally shared a quiet moment. The bride asked what had happened, and he explained briefly, choosing his words carefully. She squeezed his hand, proud of how he had handled the situation, with dignity, patience, and strength. Together, they took a deep breath and stepped back into the celebration waiting for them. Across the street, the neighbor retreated indoors, closing her curtains slowly. The silence in her house felt heavy. For the first time, she questioned her instincts and the fears that had guided her actions. Outside, vows were about to be exchanged, symbolizing unity and hope. As the ceremony began, the setting sun painted the sky in warm colors. Friends and family gathered close, focusing on love, commitment, and a shared future. What started as a moment of prejudice ended as a lesson in humility. The wedding continued, not just as a celebration of two people, but as a quiet reminder that respect and understanding can overcome even the deepest assumptions. As evening settled in, the backyard transformed into a scene of warmth and elegance. Soft lights twinkled overhead, candles glowed on neatly arranged tables, and gentle music filled the air. The ceremony had just concluded, and the bride and groom were officially husband and wife. Applause erupted, followed by cheers and joyful tears. What could have been a ruined day had instead become even more meaningful, charged with emotion, resilience, and pride. The groom took the microphone to thank everyone for coming. His voice was steady, calm, and sincere. He spoke about love, unity, and the importance of standing together even when misunderstood. Without naming the incident directly, he reminded the guests that dignity and patience were powerful tools. Today, he said, is proof that love speaks louder than fear, and respect is stronger than judgment. The crowd responded with a standing ovation. The bride then shared a few words, smiling brightly. She talked about family, community, and the future they hoped to build, one rooted in understanding and kindness. Her words carried grace, not bitterness. It was clear that neither of them wanted anger to have a place on their wedding day. Instead, they chose joy. Dinner was served, and conversations flowed freely. Guests laughed, shared stories, and danced as the band picked up the tempo. Children ran across the lawn, elders watched proudly, and friends captured memories on their phones. The house that had earlier been the subject of suspicion now stood as a symbol of celebration and unity. The energy was peaceful, joyful, and welcoming. Across the street, the neighbor watched quietly from her window once more, but this time, her expression was different. She saw dancing, heard laughter, and noticed how respectful and organized everything was. Shame weighed heavily on her. She realized that her actions had been driven by bias, not facts. For the first time, she wondered how many times she had made similar judgments without ever questioning them. Later that evening, something unexpected happened. The neighbor slowly crossed the street, her steps hesitant. She paused at the edge of the celebration, unsure if she would be welcomed. A guest noticed her and alerted the groom. Instead of reacting with anger, the groom took a breath and walked toward her. She apologized, quietly, awkwardly, but sincerely. She admitted she had been wrong and said she was embarrassed by her behavior. The groom listened, then nodded. He thanked her for coming forward and accepted her apology with calm maturity. "We all have things to learn," he said simply. "What matters is what we do after." The moment didn't erase the mistake, but it changed its ending. The neighbor left shortly after, carrying a lesson she wouldn't forget. The celebration continued late into the night, filled with dancing, laughter, and hope. As the newlyweds shared their first dance under the stars, it was clear that their wedding day had become more than a ceremony. It was a quiet statement about character, grace, and the power of choosing understanding over anger. In a small American neighborhood, love had not only united two people, it had exposed prejudice and replaced it with a chance for growth.